What's going on, guys? It's Aiden with Upper James Toyota, and today we put together a little compilation of my favorite vehicles over $60,000. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future Toyota related content, and we'll check you guys out in the next video. Beside me, I've got a 2024 SR5 4Runner. We're gonna take a closer peek to see what an entry-level 4Runner would get you before the redesign in 2025. If you guys do like this video, please do not forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of our future Toyota-related content, and let's check out the 4Runner. Let's start up front with the powertrain. Now, if you're one of the lucky owners of this generation 4Runner, you'd be getting a 4-liter V6 paired with a 5-speed auto. And if you've driven the vehicle, it is an interesting transmission that we did offer on this, only because it's a little bit clunky. It takes a little bit of time to shift, but it's also one of those really cool things jumping into this vehicle because it basically is a truck, just not on a truck typical platform. So it is pretty unique to this vehicle. Now, power-wise from this big V6, you'd actually be surprised. It doesn't make a whole lot of horsepower. It's rated at about 270 horsepower and about 278 pound-feet of torque. So if you do smash the gas, it actually doesn't really go. But that's kind of the fun of one of these vehicles because it's just built like a truck, and you definitely feel that behind the wheel. Now, looking at the front end, I am a huge fan of this generation 4Runner, and I'm not really too sure what I think about the new gen. I think that I like the style of it, but I did prefer this generation a bit more than the new ones. Now, it definitely needed some tech upgrades, some safety sense upgrades, and definitely more convenience features on the inside, but this being a base level entry-level 4Runner you could have gotten, this actually does come loaded with quite a few things. Now, the one thing I will say that this one is missing, which I do love when a 4Runner has, is the hood scoop that would go in the direct middle of your hood. I think it just adds a little bit more of that off-roadiness and a little bit more of that bulky look. You guys can let me know down below in the comments what you guys think. Now, one of the last things I'm gonna be mentioning on the front end of this design on the 4Runner, for an entry-level vehicle, this does come with fog lamps. Now, the interesting thing is that Toyota says they are LED front lights, which are your headlights and your fog lamps, which is true, but oddly enough, it actually doesn't give you much visibility off the front end. I always find driving one of these in the nighttime is that it doesn't seem that bright on the front end, which is why I'm a huge fan of any 4Runner like the TRD Pro for this current generation that came with the light bar, because obviously I do know onto the new generation 4Runner, they will be coming with the TRD Pro and the Trail Hunter offered with the light bar, which I think just basically on a massive hood definitely gives you a bit more visibility, which I think will be a huge improvement from this current generation one, and definitely stay tuned to check that out if we ever get one of those coming to our dealership, because I'm going to be really interested to see what that actually looks like in person. Now, onto the side profile of the 4Runner. On this package, you will be getting 17-inch alloys, which, yeah, they're not gonna be my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of this all silver or chrome wheel. It doesn't actually look too bad on the white that this vehicle is currently in. However, it's just not gonna be my preferred wheel on the Runner. If you're gonna ask my opinion, I'm gonna be more in favor of a TRD Pro wheel or even a Limited, which are massive, I know, but either way, I think those kind of fit this vehicle with a bigger tire on a bigger vehicle a lot better. Now, one cool thing that they actually did offer on the 4Runner is going to be your running boards. And oddly enough, this was a standard feature for 4Runners in Canada for this generation, which I think as a vehicle at this size, you're gonna want it. If you had any kids getting in and out, or just any passengers, it definitely makes it a bit easier, makes it a little bit more accessible getting in and out of the vehicle. The one thing I will say about this is that this is one of the only 2 trim levels you can opt in for a 7-passenger configuration. And the odd thing is that it's the base level SR5 or basically a fully loaded Limited. Those are the only 2 that came as a 7-passenger, which I just find interesting because if you want all those features and you want the extra space, typically, yes, it's for a family vehicle. So it's interesting that they didn't offer more 7-passenger grades to this vehicle. You guys can let me know if you have one and if that kind of made you, sway to get a Limited or to get an SR5. Both options are great in my opinion. Whether you guys are looking for your next vehicle, servicing your current vehicle, or just an existing client of ours, don't forget to mention that you've seen our videos online for a special YouTube only incentive. Now, if you've seen my previous videos before, you know I'm not someone who's a huge fan of chrome. However, I actually might go against what I've said before, because on this 4Runner, I actually don't mind the use of chrome. It does match the wheels a little bit. You get an SR5 badge here, which obviously could say limited or TRD off-road, but that would actually come black from the factory. Either way, I do think it's a pretty cool color combination, especially with your roof rails, which I think is a pretty cool accessible feature to actually just have on a vehicle right from the factory. Now, if you ever used it, great, but I actually just like the styling of it and what it actually makes the vehicle look like. So you could put like a Thule rack on top, you could put crossbars, you could strap, you know, a canoe, skis, whatever you'd like for, you know, a trip up north, which I think is actually pretty cool from Toyota. Now, my favorite feature that we'll be offering directly from the factory is going to be on the rear end of a 4Runner, and that's going to be your tow hitch. In Canada, this became a standard feature on this vehicle, and I think it's definitely something that people wanted, because having a vehicle at this size, you're probably going to tow something, maybe nothing huge, but at least to have that option and to be everyone's best friend to tow something to the dump or to throw a little bike rack on the back. It just made it a little bit more user-friendly in my opinion. Now, opening up the rear of the 4Runner. The interesting thing with this is, this being a base level SR5, this is actually not power. So they have a little strap here. You can pull this down. It's not that heavy, but obviously it doesn't make it as accessible as, say, some of our other vehicles that we offer. The big thing I always found with the 4Runner, which I was happy when they introduced the Grand Highlander, was that, as you can see with your third row up, it doesn't give you much space. There's actually hardly any space at all. I actually don't know what you would fit in the back with these up. And collapsing the third row is actually pretty simple, but oddly enough, Toyota did this in a two-step process. You have to pull this little lever firstly, which will drop your headrest, and then you can pull this little lever and that will drop your seats flat. So you can obviously add a bit more cargo storage or any, you know, suitcases for a family trip. Now, it's interesting that Toyota has done this on a lot of our vehicles, but what they will actually do is, on this vehicle, even though there's only 2 seats in the back, they actually offer 4 cup holders and 2 little small storage compartments, which I find interesting because typically 2 people wouldn't have 4 drinks, but I guess you can use that, you know, for some people in the third row or the middle row, whatever you have when you're packing this fully with your family. Now, another great thing they have offered on this vehicle, which again is just how the vehicle is built, but on your right hand side here, you actually have 2 little outlets. So you can plug in a small microwave, a little cooker, you could plug in, say, a battery pack to blow up an air mattress or something like that. So they definitely have made this more accessible for everyday use and, you know, a vehicle that could offer a lot of things directly from the factory. Alrighty, now jumping into the SR5 4Runner. Now, like I mentioned before, this is an entry-level vehicle, and it's pretty nice that Toyota has loaded that up with a few features that typically you would have to upgrade a package to actually receive. So, standard, you get Softech seats, which is like our fake leather. It feels like it acts like it. It just doesn't cost as much to repair, which I do like on any of our vehicles. You get a power passenger side seat, which typically isn't offered on a lot of our vehicles. You have to up to a pretty high trim level to get a feature like that, just like a sunroof and some small other convenience features like, say, a bigger screen and stuff like that. But oddly enough, on a 4Runner and this generation, this was a larger screen you got, which definitely needed a refresh. So I'm happy to say that the 2025 do get the more, you know, advanced screens, just like our Tacomas and other vehicles like that. However, oddly enough, being on the inside, the one thing I've always noticed on a 4Runner compared to, say, a Grand Highlander, a Sequoia, some stuff like that, is that your windows are massive on this vehicle. And it definitely, you know, opens up the inside a bit, lets some more natural light in, but it is interesting compared to any other vehicles on the market. Maybe that's because I come from a smaller vehicle that I drive. If you saw my previous video driving my GR86, is that vehicle being a bit smaller, yeah, obviously space versus that and onto this, they're very, very different. However, just visibility wise, you do get a lot of, you know, light, and these windows do feel a bit larger than normal, but I like that. It's kind of cool to have that on a vehicle at this size. Now, a couple things on the inside that I just find interesting on the 4Runner, and I never really knew this until I started working here, because, you know, talking to clients are like, I love my 4Runner, whether it's a 2012, whether it's a 2016 or a 2022, whatever it was, everyone always said the same thing. And it's just, they give you such good practicality in a vehicle like this, kind of feeling like a truck, and this engine was bulletproof. But I found it odd because on the inside, I really wouldn't look and see this is a 2024 vehicle. You know, I look at the screens, I look at the dials, I look at these old little displays like we had on the Camry, for example, that had the actual cutout buttons of where the air was going and stuff like that. I just found it pretty interesting. Now, the one thing when I started working here on the prior generation 4Runner, I guess this current generation, but just a different model year, was that a heated steering wheel wasn't a luxury on most of the trim levels, which I found interesting. Now, for 2024s, it is standard on the grades, which I think is a huge improvement on a vehicle at this price point. I would hope that obviously that became a standard feature, but oddly enough, it's not located on the spot that most of our heated steering wheel buttons are located. Now, on a new vehicle like a new Camry, a Crown Signia, a Land Cruiser, it's actually going to be in your middle stack buttons here with your climate control. But some of our other vehicles, they're typically located by your left knee. But oddly enough, you look on the inside, you can't find the button anywhere until you actually look a little bit further, and it's going to be down here beneath your stop start button, which I just think is interesting that it's the only button other than, you know, to start the vehicle or to turn it off that they added on the inside. A couple other things I'm going to touch on while I'm in here. This definitely does have one of the most interesting heated seat designs. And when I say that is that you actually have this little roller here. So typically on most of our vehicles, we have, you know, a 3-stage heated seat that has a high, medium, and a low. This one actually just has this little roller. You just roll back or forward. So forwards you're full, and then, you know, bringing it back is going to be turning it off or a bit lower, which I think is just kind of cool. It actually gives you a little bit more customization on how warm you want your seats, because I find high is too hot, medium's, you know, too weak. So I want kind of something in between that. And I find that on a long trip, or from ever driving one of these or any of our vehicles that do have that heated seat, you know, staging, is that I'm always kind of going to high and then switching to medium because I'm just getting too hot on the inside. So I do like what they've done there. The last thing I want to touch upon being on the inside is going to be this screen. Now, if you've been a Toyota customer for a while, if you've had our vehicles in the past, you will know that this screen looks very, very familiar. It kind of came from a Highlander, a Camry, some of the old Corollas had it too, Corolla hatchbacks, but the screen is definitely laid out very user-friendly. There's not a whole lot of features attached to it, but it obviously does have plug-in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's not wireless, which again, I found that really interesting for this being a 2024. So definitely for the improvements onto a 25, there's gonna be a lot of them. So definitely stay tuned to check out that video whenever we do get one here on the lot. Now let's take a closer peek onto the second and third row, if I can actually fit back there to see what it offers. Alrighty, now jumping into the second row of the 4Runner. Now, this being definitely one of our bigger vehicles that we offer, I will say that my headspace is actually pretty good back here. They have this good little cutout for your second row passengers. So, you know, I'm actually pretty comfortable here. I don't mind this whatsoever. The seat's actually in the furthest back position it can be, and I still have quite a lot of legroom, which I'm gonna be a big fan of. Now, one of the biggest features I love on this vehicle, which is something so small that we just don't offer on a whole lot of them, is going to be this little rear storage compartment behind both the driver and passenger side seats. Now, I remember growing up, my mom had an RDX and this had it as well. And I found it so convenient because I could always, you know, throw my iPad down there or any books or stuff like that. So I just find that for any people in the rear of this vehicle or even kids, this would be a very convenient thing to have. And it's odd that we don't offer that on a whole lot of our vehicles. So interesting what Toyota has done there. Now, if you were sitting in the back here, you do definitely have a few things that will make your time back here a little bit more enjoyable. What I mean by that, number one, cup holders. Toyota always does a whole lot of cup holders, and they add, I think, a few too many into the vehicle versus how many people it can actually carry. So I've got 2 in my door, there's 2 on the passenger door, and I've got 2 in here as well, plus another 4 in the third row seating. So they've definitely offered, you know, 10 different cup holders for about 5 people back here. So if you've got 2 drinks each, perfect. Not too sure how many people will have that while driving one of these. Now, other than that though, you're not getting a whole lot of things to do back here. You don't have any heated rear seats, but you do have 2 USB ports and 2 fans, which you don't have any control on for the temperature. The person in the front has to decide that. Now, oddly enough, for this vehicle being a 5 or even a 7 passenger like this one here, is that there's actually no option even on the front screens to set the temperature in the rear. So typically on most of our vehicles, that is something that we offer. So, you know, if the people in the front were cold, but they wanted heat in the back, you can kind of move that around. It's interesting that it's just one climate control for the entire vehicle. So obviously you're just hoping that everyone's gonna be fine with the temperature that you do set. The one thing I will say, which I did not mention on the outside of the vehicle, but I'm going to mention now, is that this current 4Runner, and I'm happy to say that the new generation has it as well, is going to be the power folding glass in the rear. So your full rear glass can fold all the way down and all the way back up, which I just find so cool. And I love seeing people driving these on the road and they've got, you know, 2 big dogs in the back. They've got their heads out the back window, just enjoying life. I think it's something super cool that definitely, you know, adds a little bit of that, you know, different factor onto a vehicle like this that typically you just don't see on most of our vehicles. Now, I'm going to try and jump into the 3rd row here. I'm gonna see how that works. I'm gonna magically appear in the back there. I don't really want to put on camera what it's gonna look like me getting into it, but stay tuned for 2 seconds and I'll be back there. And I'm in the back. Now, I'm not comfortable back here whatsoever. This is actually probably going to be the squishiest fit I have in the 3rd row of any of our vehicles. And if you saw a video that I did, one of the first ones we actually posted between a Grand Highlander and a regular Highlander, I was in the 3rd row of the Highlander. I had more space than this, and I'm regretting not being in that vehicle right now, saying that I felt super, super squished because I'm not comfortable at all. It's actually so odd that my toes are on the ground, but my heels actually don't fit. Like it feels so uncomfortable to sit back here. However, if you were smaller, had smaller kids, this could definitely work for you. For someone at my size, this is not the seat I would be asking to sit in even for 5 minutes. I'm not comfortable back here whatsoever. However, like I mentioned, onto the trunk, if you did have anyone back here, you've got these nice little storage compartments, which I don't know if you can see, but they're right down here. I've got 2 cup holders. I've got some charging ports. So any smaller kids, great, or even want to fold these seats flat and just use, obviously, the middle bench for your 3 passengers and keep this for cargo. I would say that's probably your best bet on this kind of 4Runner. This is a 2025 RAV4 Trails in Army Green. We're gonna take a closer peek to see exactly what the Trails gives you versus any other RAV. So stay tuned and let's check it out. So let's talk RAV4 Trails. Now, this was introduced, I believe, in either 22 or 2023 when they discontinued the RAV4 TRD Off-Road. And it gave you some pretty similar things. It looked a little bit different versus a regular gas RAV4. And visually from the front end, you can see it does look a little bit different by one standalone feature. And that is going to be your fog lights, which are now up here. And they're kind of in this like little boxy shape, which is different than any RAV that we offer. The front end definitely looks a little bit different than any other one. And in my opinion, it's probably the most aggressive looking RAV. Now, it's offered in different colors versus any other RAV in our lineup. So now into the 2025 segment, this color, which is Army Green, you used to be able to get this with a white roof, which wasn't my exact perfect configuration of this vehicle, but now that the full vehicle is this dark army green color, I think it is a really cool color to have, and it's a color I wish we offered on more vehicles. I know we offer it on like a Tundra, for example, and some other vehicles in our lineup too, but I think having this for, you know, an everyday vehicle that you see a lot of on the road definitely makes this color and this car very unique. Now, other than the front end and the color, pretty much the RAV4 Trails is basically like any other RAV. It's gonna kind of fit in like an XLE Premium would on the gas model side or the Woodland on the hybrid side. Now, the only difference on a Woodland, that comes with different rims, and if we ever get one of those in, I will definitely be sure to, you know, maybe compare a Trails versus a Woodland version. Now, onto the front design of this vehicle, and especially I'm gonna emphasize the color in this position, because I think that this color makes the front end of the vehicle look a little bit more aggressive. I think you see the lines a little bit more versus a silver or a black or a dark dark blue or even a red that we offer on just a regular RAV. Now, the one big thing though I will be saying on this RAV versus any other gas RAV in our lineup is that this will be the only one that comes with these gunmetal 19-inch TRD off-road or trail focused rims. Now, I think they've done a good job because, like I've said in previous videos, I like a vehicle that's gonna have a rim that's not a full silver. I think doing something a little bit differently with a darker black or say a gray in this sense, I think they've done a really good job to style this vehicle. And I feel like the whole thing kind of, comes around into one. So when I say that, I mean that the dark trim around your wheel wells, which that's the only thing I don't like, is that I wish it was gloss black. Other than that though, I think that the rim color mixed in with this trim, mixed in with this black roof rail as well on the top end of your RAV, with obviously this black plastic piece running along your side skirts as well. Yes, I would rather that be gloss black, and I think that would be the perfect way that I would build this if it was an option from Toyota. But other than that, I'm still a huge fan of exactly what this vehicle can do and what this vehicle can look like. Now, when I say what this vehicle can do, the interesting thing about a RAV4 Trails is that it is the only RAV that can tow up to 3,500 pounds. So versus any other RAV, you are getting a lot more tow capacity on this vehicle. So if you're looking at towing a small utility trailer, a snowmobile, some kind of watercraft like a smaller boat or a jet ski, this could definitely be a pretty cool vehicle to do it in, and a vehicle that you'd look really good in as well. All right, now onto the back end of the RAV4 Trails. Like I mentioned, onto the side or the front of the vehicle, I mentioned this can tow up to 3,500 pounds, which is quite the increase over a regular gas model RAV, which is gonna be coming in at towing about 1,500 pounds. So if you don't need something huge like a Tundra, a Sequoia, anything like that for any of your towing needs, this could definitely be a good vehicle for you, while still obviously packing a lot of space into the rear end of this vehicle, or even the second row if you didn't have any passengers back there. Now, the only thing I will say on this vehicle that I would be changing if this was my personal car, I think that I would be blacking out this Toyota logo. I think that blacking that out and having that chrome piece on the rear, it's the only eyesore that I'm gonna say is on the back end of this vehicle. Now, this is what the tow hitch looks like on the back of a RAV. And it's interesting because typically on the road, I don't see many RAVs that have a trailer hitch installed. Now, this is the Toyota genuine factory accessory that comes directly from Toyota when your new vehicle arrives. And I think that having that on, it actually still makes the vehicle look good. I know other manufacturers, other vehicles on the road, you can see, someone adding in a tow hitch somewhere and maybe it not looking aesthetically the nicest on the back end of a vehicle. I think Toyota has done a pretty good job to style the actual mount and the assembly of this tow hitch versus any other cars on the road. So kudos to Toyota in that sense. Now, opening up the back end of this vehicle, standard on a RAV4 Trails, everything on the inside here is exactly what you'd be getting from Toyota in Canada. So you're getting your carpet mats or your summertime mats. The winter ones are already installed, seeing how it is Christmas time. Your cargo liner is obviously going to be included on this vehicle, your tonneau cover, and your cargo net. So if you are going to be loading stuff into this vehicle, this comes with a lot of great things you don't have to pay anything extra for. So I think that's really good value. Now, the interesting thing on this vehicle is you can option this with two different interior colors, black being one of them, and then mocha is the other option. This one is the mocha trim, and I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of the interior. I think that the black on the inside would be my preference. However, I do like that Toyota's offering something a little bit different onto, say, a RAV that's not a limited, because that can be optioned with 3 different interior colors. So I think they've done a cool job to kind of, broaden their spectrum and their customer reach, I guess I could say on that note, to basically give someone a different option over a regular black. Now, this vehicle has been here for about a week or so. I've been inside and out of it because I do like this color a lot. So I was taking some pictures, sending them off to some clients of mine, but I will say that the interior is growing on me. I don't know if I'd get mine the way this one's spec'd out with the interior option. You guys can let me know down below in the comments. So let's take a closer peek onto the inside of this vehicle to show you exactly what the mocha interior offers. Alrighty, let's take a closer peek onto the inside of the RAV4 Trail. So I'm starting with the color for sure. So having the mocha interior, when it was originally announced that they were going to be continuing with the mocha interior, I hoped and I wished they were going to go with this dark brown as just the interior color, which is what you're going to see on the outer part of these seats. Now, the only thing I'm not a big fan of is going to be the middle insert. And I think for me, that's just the one deciding factor that maybe I wouldn't be opting in for this interior. I think it's definitely unique. I think it's different, and it definitely is something that we typically don't see a whole lot of. Most of the RAVs, I would say out of 50 brand new RAVs that we get in, I would say 48 of those are a black interior, because typically on any gas model or even a hybrid model RAV, there's only specific trim levels that are offered with that different interior color. Now, seeing it in person, being in here for a little bit, okay, it could grow on me. I wish this was either fully brown, this dark brown that you see on the sides, or it was just black and it was like a two-tone with a brown and a black seat, because then I look at the contrast, which is the big eyesore for me in the middle here, and that's going to be all of this orange stitching and orange trim on this vehicle. Now, if you guys know anything about the trail or the TRD off-road version of the RAV, which is basically what this one replaced, this actually used to be red on that trim level, which was interesting. You would get TRD in the actual head covers of your seats, the stitching on your seats, on the dash, and all of this, I want to say it's like an insert, it's like plastic insert, was actually red. And I think that would maybe do a little bit better versus this orange, because it is an interesting color that Toyota chose. If it was black on the inside, maybe it would contrast a little bit better. But I think there's a lot of different colors happening on the inside, especially then when you look out and you see this dark green, and then you see the black dash with this off-white dashboard with all the orange, with the brown. It is definitely a lot, so it kind of makes your head look and turn in different ways. But to be honest, I would live with it. I'm not a huge, fan of it, but I wouldn't be disappointed if this was offered to me and I ordered a black interior and I saw this in person. Maybe I actually would be, persuaded to buy this. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I want to know if you guys would opt in for a black, if you're a fan of this interior, because obviously this is the only one that's offered for this specific trim level of a RAV. Now, I mentioned this is very close to an XLE Premium, and it is. It is one of the only, I guess, 3 RAV4s out of 5 gas models that are offered with leather interior or soft tech seats. So I think that this being super close to the XLE Premium, the only thing that you're going to be really missing on the inside is driver memory seats. I wish they added that. It should be a control right here, which is on an XLE Premium, and it gives you 2 different driver setting modes for any drivers that will be behind the wheel of this vehicle. Now, the one thing this gives you over the XLE Premium is it actually gives you a wireless charging pad, which is right here. Now, it's not a selling feature, at least for me, that I would be pushing to this vehicle just to get the wireless charger. I know it's very convenient, and if you're someone who likes a clean car interior and doesn't want all these cords and stuff like that on the inside of your vehicle, then yes, that is a great option to have. So you can just simply place your phone down and then your phone can be charged up. The only downfall to it is that it does take a little bit of time to actually charge your phone up. You would have a much faster charge plugging into a USB, which is down located behind the wireless charger, or opening up your center console for 2 USB-C ports. Other than that though, this is very, very close to the other features you'd be getting on the XLE Premium, minus just all the orange on the inside. And again, being in here and even saying about it again, it's not my favorite, but I could probably live with it. The one thing that I think is interesting on this vehicle, which I didn't really notice until I was actually on the inside of this, but I think it's really interesting because when I'm looking outside, if I wasn't looking at the emblem down here, I actually wouldn't think I'm in a Toyota. This color is very exclusive for only a few vehicles in our lineup, and I think that it just gives you kind of like that rarity of driving it, because you typically just don't see them that often. So I really am a huge fan of this. If I'm going to be in the market for a RAV4, because I'm not really too sure what my next car will be, I'm kind of leaning more Camry side of things. However, if this color was offered on a Camry, I would be going that route all day long. However, if I wanted an SUV, I think the Trails would be my preferred trim level, not even for anything towing wise. I just like the look of the vehicle with the rims and the color options, but you guys can let me know down below in the comments. Now, I'm gonna take a peek at the rear seats of this vehicle. I know it's very similar to other RAVs that I have done a review on, but I at least wanna see what that looks like and if it feels any different than any other RAV in our lineup. Alrighty, now jumping into the rear seat of the RAV4 Trails. I actually may say I like it a little bit better in the back here, which I typically don't say on any of the vehicles that we are shooting. And the reason I like that is because you get more of the brown back here. You have this insert here, which is all of that brown, and the backs of the seats are also all brown. And looking at that, I just really wish Toyota put the back seat with all of the brown leather onto the front and actually where you're sitting on the seat. I think that that would have just rounded out the vehicle, and this white wouldn't be as an eyesore as it looks to me in person. Now, I'm just thinking of this now, but having a white or, you know, a lighter color on your seats, especially on something that typically your clothes will actually be on and you'll be sitting on, if you're wearing dark blue jeans or anything like that, after a while, I've actually seen different interior options on a vehicle, whether it is a white or a cream, actually kind of get a bit of that color of your pants or shorts on that seat. Now, I've never seen it on any of our vehicles, even if one of these comes in that's used and it has, you know, this insert on it or a lighter interior on a RAV4. I haven't actually seen that onto the seats. I've only ever seen it once on like a 2012 or a 2013 Avalon that had a full white interior. And that one you can kind of see on the sides of the seats, kind of like a little bit of a blue, you know, brush onto the seat. So obviously someone was wearing jeans quite a bit and were in and out of that vehicle all the time. So that kind of stained their seats a little bit. So I think that's the only thing that maybe Toyota has kind of missed the mark on slightly, because obviously getting a vehicle, you don't want to be scrubbing your seats every month. I know you want to keep your car nice and clean, but it's different rather than just throwing it into a car wash and then getting a nice little interior vacuum, maybe wiping the seats, but not actually scrubbing them down. So maybe that's the only thing that I would, you know, opt in for if it was an option. And that's the only thing I think that Toyota, the little downfall that they have is just simply that, is that you order a vehicle and if someone comes in and says, Aiden, this is what I'm looking at, you know, we go over the vehicle, you take it out for a test drive, you love it, we sit down, there really isn't a whole lot of customization. And I wish that maybe one day they would offer that to customers, because having the option to spec out a vehicle in a different color, and even like this RAV, right? The body style minus the front end with the fog lights and the rims still looks like a regular RAV. So it'd be really cool if Toyota ever got to the point of ordering, you know, any of the trim levels available on a vehicle, say like a RAV, that you could order Army Green, which is right now specific to a Trails, but maybe down the road you could order Army Green on an XLE Premium or an LE version of a RAV, just to kind of give you more of that customization. Because I find that in today's market, you typically have someone coming in looking to check off, you know, 4 or 5 boxes of their, what I call must-haves in a vehicle, which is very important, which you should be getting. But if someone came into me and said, Aiden, I want a green RAV and I'm only set on a green one, but they're good with the features of, say, an LE, which is your entry-level RAV4, well, that's a pretty big price increase you'll be spending just to get that kind of color. So I hope that maybe one day down the road, Toyota kind of pushes off to that, and they will give clients the option to actually get different rims, different colors, different interior options on their next Toyota, which I think would obviously drive a bit more business. Back in 2021, I was attending a conference with my boss, Jason, reviewing all of our new models for the upcoming 2022 model year. And the GR86 stood out to me entirely. It was a great entry-level sports car at a great price that gave you very good features for the dollar figure you are spending. And I'm so glad to have chosen this vehicle as my new personal car. Now, this is very different from my other videos I've ever posted on this channel. And if you want to see a full in-depth review of this, we will leave a link down below to take you exactly to that video. But today I'm going to be touching over a few things and then taking you for a drive for the reason why I ordered and why I currently still drive a GR86. My name's Aiden with Upper James Toyota, and let's check out my daily driver. So the first thing that caught my eye on the new generation GR86 was going to be the styling of the vehicle overall. I've driven a prior generation, and then obviously once I saw the new generation and the improvements they have made to the styling, to the features, and big one to the powertrain, I knew I wanted to get one. Now, the way I spec'd mine is the way that I would spec mine over and over and over again. I opted in for a premium manual, which is, I believe, the best way to get this vehicle. It is such a driver-focused car, and to have a very, very small sports car, rear-wheel drive, you want this in manual, because I kid you not, it is like driving a little go-kart. Now, powering this vehicle is going to be a 2.4 liter Boxer 4-cylinder. It's gonna be making about 228 horsepower. Now, from someone who has driven this for the past almost 2 years, or actually maybe a little even more than 2 years, I can tell you that I think the 228 number they're given is definitely underperforming for what you actually get on this vehicle. I believe it's closer to the 250 mark. If you've ever driven one, I want to know if you guys agree with me, because I do believe it definitely puts out a little bit more horsepower. Now, front end of this vehicle, the biggest thing for me was the way that this front end sat on the road. I think that just the way that it looks, and it's so simple, yet it looks so new and futuristic. I love the new headlamps. I like the active aero that they have. I like the front end design. And there's not a whole lot of plastic minus this front grille. And if you've ever seen one of these in the daytime, they have a DRL, or a daytime running light, that kind of swoops up this way, which is very, very close to what the Supra looks like when the DRLs are on that. The Supra is a little bit thinner, this is a little bit thicker, but I actually think that this in the daytime with the DRLs on versus say the nighttime lights definitely make this car stand out on the road. Now, a very common question that I've been getting, and when I tell clients that I do drive one of these who know a little bit more about these than say the average person walking in, they have simply asked me, Aiden, would you pick this or the BRZ? And to be honest, I would still take this. Even if I worked at Subaru, maybe yes, because I worked there, I would just opt in to get one because I'd be working at Subaru. But if you're gonna ask me aesthetically, I do like the look and what you get on one of these more than the BRZ. Now, I know a fully loaded version of that is a limited model, but you're missing a couple of things that the 86 gets you. Like this front grille design is a little bit different than the BRZ. That being said, you get a duckbill spoiler on a premium model for the 86, and you do not get one on the BRZ. Another really big feature that I love on this car, and I'll show you on the side, is going to be something so simple, but I think it makes and rounds off the car so much more, is going to be these mirror caps. If you're going the Subaru version, these would be blue, or in this case, Torino blue, which is the paint color that is here in front of me today. Now, I like the fact they blacked this out. It's not matte, it's gloss, and I think that paired up with 18-inch alloy wheels wrapped in Michelin Pilot 4 tires, I think that was such a grab for me to get this car. I think that having the sticky tire, the 18 inches versus a 17-inch on a base is one of the many reasons why I bought this, because you want a grippier tire, especially in the summertime. This thing being rear-wheel drive, you put on good tires, which this one comes standard with, you can put this around a corner or track it like I have done before. You grip to the road insanely. You do not lose traction at all. Maybe if there's a little bit of water on the road, yeah, that's gonna definitely make you slide a little bit more than say the road being completely dry and warm out. However, this is ideally the perfect tire that you'd be wanting that doesn't cost you a fortune to replace on an entry-level sports car from Toyota. Now, the last feature on the outside that I will be a huge fan of is going to be this duckbill style spoiler. Now, this will paint match whatever color you get your car. So if it's black, the spoiler will be black. If it's red, spoiler's red, for example. And in this case, it matches the paint color here. And I think it's just one of those things that make it stand out a little bit more on the road. And it's actually funny, whenever I'm driving, I see so many prior generation, whether that's an 86 or a BRZ, and they all, or most of them actually have this added, because I think it kind of rounds off the aerodynamics of this vehicle and gives this aggressive front end, with even the roof having active aero over the roof, kind of direct airflow over the top of it to the back spoiler. It definitely makes the vehicle pop a little bit more than anything else you could basically put as like a, a fully mounted spoiler on the rear trunk of one of these. If you're gonna ask me the only thing I'm not a huge fan of on this vehicle, it's going to be down below. And I just don't like this plastic. I think that if this was wrapped gloss black, and I kind of want to wrap mine gloss black to match this little black insert along the trunk here, I think that just would have just sealed the deal for me on this car. I can live with it, it's okay. But if I was gonna keep this car for say 20 years, I might be wrapping this a different color. But other than that, I think this is the perfect entry-level car. If you're looking for an affordable, reliable vehicle, definitely check out a GR86. All right, guys, so now we're behind the wheel of the GR86. Now, Driving this car, I've driven mine quite a bit. I'm sorry I'm not really looking towards the camera too much right now because I'm focused on what's going ahead of me. We're just on some residential roads right now, so I'm trying to be careful, especially because it's school time right now. But a couple things you notice right off the bat. Number one is that you feel a lot in this car. And I'm not too sure if the mic is picking up exactly hitting over bumps and small stuff like that. However, you're not buying this car for the comfort of, say, a luxury vehicle that you're not going to feel the road. You definitely feel everything. The smallest bump is definitely more exaggerated in a vehicle like this, but that's kind of the fun of it. You're buying a vehicle, sport-tuned suspension, it's lower to the ground, it's a sports car. So you're not expecting the smoothest of rides, compared to another model. So, say something like a Camry. You jump into a Camry, or I drive one that's at the dealership, and it's a night and day difference of just how smooth that vehicle rides compared to this one. And I've really only noticed that when I do drive different vehicles at work, because every day I'm just so used to this. When I first got into this car and I first drove it home, I'd never driven it before. So I bought it without driving it, and that's okay. And the moment I drove it home, I was like, wow, this is going to be a very stiff, future for my next car. And we're stuck behind a bus right now, which is why we're awkwardly stopped. But either way, getting behind the wheel of this, it is like driving a go-kart. I mentioned that before. The couple downfalls, I guess I will say, space is not your friend in this vehicle. So it's just two of us right now inside the vehicle, and it's okay. If you do look in the back, there are two other seats. Now, I've driven with 4 people in this vehicle before, and take it from me, I would not recommend. It is very tight, especially when you have other things inside of the car, whether that's, going up to the cottage, which I do. Space is limited, and I would much rather take someone else's car rather than this one, simply because, space is not the greatest. Now, it still is practical, at least for my life. I don't need a whole lot of space right now. The only downfall that I really run into the space issue is whenever I'm going golfing, oddly enough. So I can fit a full size of clubs in my trunk. However, my driver or my woods, I actually tuck them in my passenger seats. So that's the only downfall to it, is just that. Now, one interesting thing too on the steering wheel, which I will show you, is that getting used to your turn columns is interesting. So typically you push down and it should stay there, but in this case, it actually comes back up. So to turn it off, you go once up, which is really interesting. So that took a little bit of time to get adjusted to, because I thought that my turn indicators weren't staying on. That's just the way that the car actually is. So it definitely takes a little bit of time to learn that side of it. However, other than that, it was pretty simple to get adjusted to. I think that visibility on this is great. Even though it's a bit lower, you still actually see a lot of what is in front of you. Now, we're jumping onto a highway very close to the dealership, so I'm gonna kind of give it a little bit, with still obviously obeying to speed signs and whatnot. However, you will notice from just a 2.4 Boxer, this still actually sounds decent. So I'm gonna punch it right now, and if you keep driving like this, it actually sounds pretty good. And the reason that is because they've used some active sound control to basically pump in a fake noise into the cabin. So it's a speaker that's mounted behind the dash. You can turn it off. I've had one customer of mine who picked one of these up who did turn theirs off. Now, he has an exhaust on his. I don't have an exhaust on mine. So it definitely kind of has a push and a pull in that sense, but for me, I don't mind it, because I don't want my car to be obnoxiously loud. I don't need it to be popping and banging, and the drone that you hear on some of these on the highway, that's just not something I wanted in my everyday vehicle, which is what I use this for. So I've had it now for a little over 2 years. I winter this. I put winters on it, which you should, because these tires, when the cold hits, they're not your friend. They don't stick to the road. It's very, very, you actually feel the difference in how hard your tires actually feel versus, say, a snow tire once the temperatures drop, below 7 degrees. So definitely throw a good pair of snows on it. People have said they throw in bags in the back of their vehicle, so sandbags or something like that, to actually put more weight onto the back wheels to give you more traction in the wintertime. I never did the last 2 winters. I never will going forward, because I never had one issue. Yes, you drive it a little bit more cautiously. Being rear wheel drive, you need to be a little bit more, present to what's actually going on. But other than that, with a manual gearbox, just like traffic is slowing down, you can downshift a couple of times and engine brake just slightly, and that will obviously slow you down. So come the winter time, that's something I do a lot more of. I really don't have a whole lot of, negatives on this car in the slightest bit. I think that, to a T, and kind of what I knew I was signing myself up for, and what my boss, Jay, kind of told me about this car and what we learned about that first day, it all kind of stuck true. They're super fun to drive. It kind of gets a little bit of like attention on the road. You don't see them a whole lot. So it is kind of cool. You see a lot of the prior generations, and then, they wave at you on the new one. So it's kind of funny that way. The only couple things to really factor is that, yes, smaller. And the biggest thing, which I didn't really anticipate, which is always something to definitely think about when purchasing a new vehicle, is going to be gas. So this is one of the only few vehicles we currently offer in our lineup that requires premium fuel. Now, it's not the greatest. It's a little bit more expensive than regular fuel. However, there's kind of a push and a pull. It's a cleaner fuel. I still average, right now I think I average 8.2 liters per 100, so under actually what Toyota rates these cars at. So I don't really push it too hard, especially come the winter time. So in the summertime, take it to a track. I'm out with the guys, going out for a cruise with, guys at work or whatever the case is. Sure, I'll have a little bit more fun there and kind of, draw out the gears a little bit more. But typically I'm driving this pretty conservatively, so I'm not really super hard on the gas. The one other really cool thing that I don't use a whole lot of in the car is there's a button down here that says track. So I push that in and you look at my tachometer in front of me, and that full thing will now change to a horizontally mounted track mode that basically gives you oil temperatures, lap timers, all of your need to know, info while you're driving the vehicle. Now, it is pretty cool, and because it is a bit colder out right now, no snow has touched the ground. So my summers are actually still on. So I really won't be doing a whole lot in this mode, because even when your tires are warmed up in the summertime, this will lock down to the road. But if your traction control is off, yeah, your back end's definitely gonna go. So you definitely need to be a little bit more cautious that way. But I think it's a really, really cool feature to have on a vehicle, and it definitely changes your driving experience, because, the tachometer, you typically read it one way. So it's, the top of the end, or the top half of the circle, is where you want to be shifting, versus, this horizontal line. So I think that is a really cool thing to add in the vehicle, and it's something that I've definitely played around with. But other than that, I honestly have no reason to tell anyone not to buy one of these vehicles. And if you are in the market for one, I think going the premium route to get the better wheels, better stereo, these Alcantara and leather trimmed seats, aluminum sport pedals. You've got a couple different things like, heated seats, for example, is not standard on a base model. Getting the duckbill, small stuff like that is such an improvement over, say, a base model. So if you're in the market, go premium. It's the way to go. You will not regret your choice, and I think you guys will have the most fun driving a car you've ever had. Limited to 181 units for a 2023 model year, Toyota is making a very limited production vehicle. Today, I've got a 2023 GR Circuit Edition Corolla, and we're gonna be taking a close, in-depth review to see what makes this vehicle so special versus a regular Corolla hatchback. My name is Aiden with Upper James Toyota, and today I'm gonna be taking a closer peek to see what Toyota has done to make this vehicle so exclusive in Toyota's new GR branded lineup. We're gonna take a closer peek, see what is so interesting about this vehicle. Let me know down below in the comments if you guys have one, if you're in the market for one, or if you've always wanted to get into one. I'm always interested to see what you guys have to say, and let's check out this car. Let's talk a little bit of history with the hatchbacks in Toyota's lineup. So back in the day, the Matrix was offered as a hatchback. Then it moved to a Yaris hatchback. Then introduced the Corolla IM, which was a hatchback. Then the Corolla hatchback, and now the most performance-based out of any of those vehicles, the GR Corolla, which is only offered as a hatchback model. Now, this being a 2023 model, this was offered in 3 different trim levels. You had a core, you moved up to a Circuit, which is this one here, and then Top, which was a Morizo edition. Now, I've only ever seen that vehicle once before. It has a couple interesting things that this vehicle doesn't have. For example, like no rear seats to really cut down on weight because it is such a track performance based vehicle. But this one here kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It's the middle point out of the three of them. It's going to be one of the easier ones to get, if I can even say that, seeing how this is only limited to 181 units versus, say, the Morizo, which was limited to only 40 units. So getting your hands on one of those was very, very difficult, and you actually had to enter a lottery to actually be selected to actually get behind the wheel of one. So very interesting what Toyota has done for a very limited production vehicle. But then there's this one, which I think is the best one to be buying. It's got the best performance based, the best features on it, and some very interesting things only specific to the Circuit. Now, we're going to be starting up front, a 1.6 liter turbo 3-cylinder engine. Now, that's the first time Toyota's ever introduced that powertrain. And rightfully so, it makes 300 horsepower and about 273 pound-feet of torque. Now, those performance numbers do not change between the three trim levels. Horsepower stays the same along all three of those. The only difference is you move up to a Morizo edition, which was the super limited one of 40, and I believe you got an extra 32 pound-feet of torque. So nothing crazy versus the Core or the Circuit, but still a little bit more of an improvement for the most track-focused version of this vehicle. Now, looking at the front end, this is featured in heavy metal, which was a new color Toyota released in 2023. If you're gonna ask me, it is a very good color option for this vehicle. It's actually only one of two color options you pay extra for, this one and Supersonic Red, which is interesting what Toyota has done. But I would definitely spec mine out the exact way this one is here today. Now, looking at the front end, the hood bulges only specific to a Circuit edition. You look down below on the front end design, and I think that the front end definitely looks a little bit more aggressive than, say, a standard Corolla. And if you're looking at something like the GR badge on the front, they have definitely showed a lot of the GR or Gazoo racing features on the outside and inside of this vehicle. And I will touch upon all of those little features that you see on this vehicle. Now, if you're looking at the front end, yeah, there's GR there. And you probably say, Aiden, where's the other GR? You actually have GR4 written on your intake, which you can actually visually see. If you kind of get down, you can see it written across, which means Gazoo Racing 4, meaning that this vehicle is all-wheel drive, which is funny because yes, it is all-wheel drive, but you have different modes of where you can actually put the power down on this vehicle. You can have it say 100% to the rear, 0 to the front. You could have 70 to the rear, 30% to the front. You could go 50-50. There are different options in case, say, you're driving this in the snow, you want to drift it on a track, or whatever you want to do. The driving, different experiences you can have on this vehicle are basically endless with a different, system that Toyota has added to give customers that different option. Now, if I am going to be talking about the front end, I do like that there's lack of plastic on the front end, and they've used heavy metal, the color of this vehicle, on the front splitter, all throughout the side and on the back of the vehicle too. I think Toyota's done a very good job at making this vehicle visually look stunning, and that's going to be my honest opinion about this vehicle. Now, I was very close to actually buying one of these, and the only reason I didn't was that I just couldn't justify the price tag one of these came in at, and that's coming from someone who works at Toyota. I thought that for an everyday vehicle, it's practical, it's got space, it's all-wheel drive, it's manual, makes a lot of power. Those are all things that I was gravitating towards, but I just couldn't wrap my head around saying, I'm gonna be spending 55, 60 grand to drive a Corolla hatchback. And that was just the one reason and the only reason why I just didn't end up pulling the trigger on one of these. And I've driven this one before. It's used on our lot right now, and they're a crazy amount of fun to drive. But I am happy with my decision. I do drive a GR86, and I was more than happy, spending the dollar I spent on that vehicle, and I just couldn't justify spending that kind of money on this vehicle. Now, seeing one in person and driving it, do I regret my decision? Maybe slightly, because I do like driving this vehicle. The driving feel of it, the performance you get out of this vehicle is crazy from a company like Toyota, who typically, other than the Supra, didn't really make a whole lot of performance-based cars. So they've done a really good job to introduce very practical and affordable sports cars cameras. I just couldn't wrap my head around this one here, unfortunately. Now, other than that, looking at the front end on this vehicle, a couple things I do like. I do like the functional fog lights that are going to be situated in the corners of your active front grille, which is cool to kind of keep the vehicle nice and cooled, because some vehicles have active aero or active cooling, or some of them just look like they have it. Well, this one actually looks like they have it, and it does actually perform that way too. So I'm happy Toyota has gone that route. Now, I do like this new headlight style on the GR Corolla, which they did introduce on the Corolla and the Corolla hatchback in 2023. You now have your ambient light that comes all the way across, which is going to be for your turn signals and four ways. I do like how it comes all the way across versus just this corner, which it actually used to do. So I think it's cool because that's a new feature on a small improvement that they've done on the Corolla before the redesign happens in the next coming years. Now, exclusive on this vehicle versus any other Corolla hatchback that we offer, you're going to see a lot of GR badging on the side of this vehicle. You'll be seeing one situated right here by the driver's side door. You get down and you see the Circuit Edition for this model year came with GR red brake calipers with these massive rotors on the front end for all the braking power if you're ever going to be tracking this vehicle. Now, on a Circuit Edition, these 18-inch multi-spoke black alloy wheels will be coming wrapped with Michelin Pilot 4 tires. Now, that's a very grippy tire, and I have that on my personal car. So I do like how they added a very grippy tire directly from a manufacturer that you're not having to upgrade to a package to get. Those come standard on a Circuit Edition. If, for example, you're one of those lucky 40 people who got a Morizo Edition, these will be coming wrapped with Michelin Pilot Cup 2 tires, which I think is insane, seeing how those tires are offered on some very powerful Mercedes. You even look at, luxury hypercars, for example, or supercars like Ferrari, McLaren, any of those manufacturers. That is a tire that some of those vehicles actually come with too. So it's crazy to think that that tire is on a Corolla and it's also offered on, say, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, which I think is a really interesting thing Toyota has done. If you're looking at more of that GR badging, you take a closer peek onto the rear of this vehicle, and you'll be seeing, just like your front intake, GR4 is written on your rocker panel. Again, another small touch that Toyota has done. And I also think it's pretty cool that you jump onto the inside in the driver's side seat. There's actually a little plaque on your door handle that basically tells you it's a limited production vehicle, only with 181 units. So again, it's pretty cool that you feel special jumping in and out of your GR Corolla. Now, if you're one of those lucky people who actually got your hands on a Circuit Edition GR Corolla, my favorite feature on this vehicle is going to be coming on the roof. This is a forged carbon fiber roof. Toyota is really trying to save weight on probably their most performance-based vehicle that we have basically ever offered, I think. This compared to, say, a new Supra, they're great too. I know they make more power than this does, but I think cosmetically they have done very cool improvements on this vehicle that basically add a little bit of that wow factor from a manufacturer like Toyota. Now, the roof is not just exclusive, but you also get this all black, which is a gloss black, not matte, spoiler on the rear trunk. And again, I think that kind of makes the vehicle look a little bit more sporty, and is something that the only thing I'd actually ask them to change would be to make this a forged carbon wing. Now, I know, saving on the cost side on this vehicle, they didn't want to add a carbon wing because that would obviously increase, what they're actually spending and what they have to put to produce one of these vehicles. But I still think just the black one looks great. The only thing I would say is to make this a forged carbon fiber spoiler, in my opinion. Now, the exclusive things on this vehicle are even said onto the back as well. You have yet again another GR badge with the most interesting thing they have probably ever offered on one of our vehicles, which is a three-way exhaust. So you've got a center tip mounted directly in the middle of your rear bumper, and then two other ones on both corners of the bumper, which again, I think is pretty cool. They're actually functional as well. So some manufacturers have these interesting looking exhausts on the rear, but they're actually not functional. It's just a little cover, say, and the real exhaust tip is further back. I think that what Toyota has done to make these functional and to also make it look pretty appealing, in my personal opinion, they've done a very good job. The only thing I'm going to be arguing with Toyota is this matte black piece of plastic. I think it's just such an eyesore. I wish that this was gloss to match the spoiler, or even better, match the actual color of the vehicle, which is heavy metal. I think that's the only thing I will be complaining about, and the one thing I wish Toyota changed when making this car. All right, guys, now taking a peek onto the inside of the GR Corolla Circuit Edition. Now, I know this is a very limited production vehicle, and they definitely have made a couple enhancements on the inside to make it feel a little bit more exclusive. Number one is going to be all the GR badging. So you get it on the back of your key fob. You will get it on the bottom of your steering wheel. Your start-stop button also has GR on it. These seats, they're Alcantara and suede leather material. They also have it. Now the seat portion of the GR badging is only exclusive on a Circuit Edition or say a Morizo for a 2023 production model year. But on the inside, I will say I'm a little underwhelmed from what they've kind of done on the inside of one of these vehicles. I think that your digital display on the front is really cool. It's only exclusive to a GR Corolla. We don't offer this tachometer and digital screens on any other vehicles with this sort of layout. But the main eyesore for me is just going to be your center console here. I think that everything in the center minus the actual 6-speed manual, which this vehicle is only offered in, you can no longer get a Corolla hatchback in manual. So that's the one thing that I could tell you you're in something a little bit different. But other than that, your wireless charger, heated seats, and all of your climate controls with your infotainment in the middle here is all the same as a regular Corolla would be. So I wish they would have done something just a little bit different to kind of distinguish this versus, another Corolla hatchback that we have. Now, if you're someone who likes simplicity and doesn't need a whole lot of crazy features on the inside, this is a very driver's focused car. Everything that you need on the inside of the vehicle is directly in front of you. You've got a G meter, you've got where all the power is going on the vehicle, which you actually can toggle with this button down here. You can select where the power is actually going. So right now it's 60 in the front, 40 in the rear. You could also split that 30 front, 70 rear, or 0 in the front, 100 rear. So you can drift this. I've done it before. It's very fun. But again, it's kind of exclusive to just this model. And I wish that they just would have added a little bit more for people getting into one of these. Now, I do like a few standard things that are in a Circuit Edition, like a JBL sound system, which is our top of the end for an audio system, which does sound very good. Other than that though, everything else doesn't really scream, anything crazy to me. I like the steering wheel. It's heated. It's also a different layout than any other wheel that we currently have in our lineup. We've got a couple buttons down here by my left knee. A heated steering wheel is nice to kind of have if you're ever going to drive this, in the winter time. It's a nice feature on most cars that they do offer these days. The one thing that I think is interesting that they added on this is a system called IMT. Now it's a little button here down by the heated steering wheel button, which is basically like an auto rev matching system. Now, someone like myself, I've driven manual for years now. My personal car is also manual, and it doesn't have that feature. And I actually like how it doesn't have that feature because, the only time I've ever actually been driving my personal car thinking, wow, I really wish it had it, is only bumper to bumper traffic. And I don't drive in a lot of bumper to bumper traffic every single day. It's maybe, once a month if I'm ever heading into Toronto, for example, that I'm ever really in that kind of traffic. But other than that, that's the only time I'd wish I had that system because it is very, very smart. And, you put your clutch in, you downshift to third, it rev matches perfectly for you. It's almost like driving automatic, but you're actually still going through the gears. Now, with talking about the gears in this vehicle is very interesting because when you put your clutch in, you go into first, they're actually a bit longer of throws, I find. It might not look that long when I'm actually doing this on camera, but this versus a GR86, which is the car that I personally have, is that the system does feel a little bit different. It's not the same gearbox and the throws definitely feel a little bit different. Now, you can get a short shifter, you can, get something installed that makes it feel a little bit, more refined to your liking. That's just my personal opinion on it. I think where the bite point is on the clutch on this vehicle is also a little weird. It's a little bit drawn out where it should be a little bit shorter, I think, just for the performance side of this vehicle. Now, obviously, both of these vehicles do come with rear seats. The Morizo Edition, one above this Circuit, doesn't come with rear seats, but they are very, very practical. You do have a lot of space. If you ever had 4 people or even 5, which you could fit, you can fit in here comfortably. However, I think most people that have this vehicle is not going to be, say, a family car. Sure, you can put your family in the vehicle, but I think it's going to be more exclusive for people wanting a fun weekend car or to track this vehicle. And with that being said, this specific unit was someone that I worked with here. His name is Adam. He had this vehicle for about 2 years. He's got a family. He drove this on the weekends, maybe to Fortinos, a couple small things here and there. He bought this brand new from us in 2023, and I can tell you this car has 1,127 kilometers on it. So not a whole lot of driving on this vehicle, but again, that's okay because it's specific and it's a very, very, very small market for one of these vehicles. And since they're so limited, it's cool that it wasn't driven 100,000 kilometers in a year and a half for say. It's actually very, very, very low mileage. So if you're in the market for a used one, this is here and available right now. Not too sure how long it will be here for, but it is here just in case you're in the market for one. All right, guys, there you have it. A 2023 GR Circuit Edition Corolla. Again, my name is Aiden with Upper James Toyota. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of our future related Toyota content, and we'll check you guys out in the next video.